In this video, we're going to be looking at how to evaluate your organisation's networking activity. So we've been thinking about this idea of networking, of starting to build networks of people and contacts. And when we're thinking about it from the organisation point of view, it's useful to look at what those potential benefits are to an organisation. So we could start with some of the business factors, like relationships with other organisations. So if all of the people who worked for your organisation only spoke to each other and had no outside relationships with people at other organisations, you would have little or no idea what was going on in your sector. So it would be very difficult to make decisions. They'd probably be quite ill-informed, and it would be really hard to kind of keep up to date with what was going on elsewhere. Building a network for your organisation also means that you've got outside expertise and access to it. So you know who to call for or call upon to find out about particular things, or to develop strategy or develop different outcomes in different areas, things that you wouldn't normally specialise in. It can allow you to more easily recruit new staff and new volunteers, to keep up to date with developments in general, to share best practice, so you can share your organisation's experiences and the things that you have found the most successful for you, and also hearing that from other organisations can be really important. It can really help you make decisions, help you work out the best plan of attack, the best actions to take. And also, just like with a personal professional network, you'll really benefit from having those referrals and those invitations. So people will have your organisation in mind. They'll recommend you when a certain opportunity comes up or specific things arise in different conversations. And that can be really useful in terms of, developing new projects and, maybe securing the next piece of work that you undertake. Building a network as an organisation should be really seen as an outreach activity. So it really allows you to build a better understanding of your audience. So having links with and contact with your audience in a regular way allows you to better kind of measure what's going on in their lives, how relevant your activities are to them, and how they fit in really with the rest of their lifestyle, the rest of the things that they're doing every day. It means it's easier for you to reach your existing audience. So if you have an open line of communication, that means you can get messages to your existing audience far more easily. And it becomes easier to build new audiences. So people who enjoy what you're doing will recommend you to their friends, recommend your organisation to their friends. And if you have a way of doing that publicly, a type of public network, so if you're involved in social networks online, for example, this can be a really nice way to attract new audiences to what you're doing. It gives you more chance of repeat engagement. So people who've engaged with what you're doing face to face might start to then engage with what you're doing online. They might look at the documentation of events that they were involved in, or they might check you out to see what's going on and then attend an event in the future. It gives you increased support for fundraising. So having that ongoing and existing relationship, that two-way relationship with your audience, allows you access to their networks as well, in terms of support for fundraising, maybe for donations or for crowd-funded projects. This can be a really important thing for organisations to bear in mind. One of the things that you'll need to really think about is how can your organisation, how can you evaluate your activities in building a network? So how much time and money is spent on building your organisation's network? This will involve things like attending events, the costs involved with presenting and publishing information, the time that's spent engaging on social networks online, the time and money that's spent meeting with professionals from outside of your organisation, and also what you do to facilitate internal networks. So how do all the members of your organisation get to know each other and get to know each other's professional interests and their strengths and their areas of experience and knowledge? You also need to look at the results of this networking activity. So these might be relatively straightforward things that are easy to record, like looking at the number of contacts in a database, or the number of followers on social media, or the number of people attending or viewing your presentations and publications. So that might be face-to-face audience figures, but also views of web pages or downloads of particular publications that you've made. You could also be thinking about the number of projects, the number of partners, and the number of participants that you're engaging with during your organisation's activities. But I'd like to think even more granular than that, so to even more detail when you're thinking about the results of the networking activity. So thinking instead about the number and the types of engagement that's going on. So this might be things like click-throughs from mailing lists, so the links that you've got in your mail out, setting up software so that you can monitor how many people are opening your emails, how many people are clicking through to different links and following up on the information that you're giving them. Things like favourites or likes or the number of plays or shares or retweets a particular piece of content is getting. Those are important to see if people are recommending it, if they're enjoying it enough to say so publicly and to show others what you're doing. You'd want to also be looking at and taking into account the direct contact that you're receiving from people outside of your organisation. So this might be things like phone calls, it might be emails, it might be messages, letters or cards. So lots and lots of different types of direct contact that could be going on. And then the last of these points is thinking about the new partnerships that you're developing, the new clients that have come to you or that you're working with through as a result of networking activity, the new projects that you're starting or that you're working on with other people, and the new staff that you've recruited. So has any of that been affected, and in what ways, by the types of network building that your organisation is doing? Then you need to also think about how you can improve your activities. So the first step for this is working out what you as an organisation want to achieve. You need to define clear objectives. You also need to work out how you're going to measure success. So selecting the relevant performance indicators. So it won't just be the number of people who are on your database, but thinking about those engagements, thinking about the things that will happen that you can measure. So those points of contact, really, that you can measure. You need to also set up the right measurement tools. So depending on what way you're meeting your audience and what way you're making your contacts, there'll be different tools that you need to use for each of those jobs. So it's worth really researching that a little bit and finding out what can be recorded and in what way it can be recorded and measured. you'll need to look for evidence of success and failure. So by collecting the data and analysing it with reference to those things that you want to achieve, so those clear objectives that your organisation wants to achieve, you can work out what the key lessons are that are being learned. And then with that information, you want to share your results. So you'll be compiling this or in some way reporting back these results to the rest of the people in the organisation. And then most importantly, acting on those. You need to involve really everyone in the organisation. So there's no point in this just being something that the directors do or that maybe members of front of house staff do. It really needs to involve everyone, and everyone, needs to be on board, needs to understand what those objectives are and what those achievements that they can make are. There's also a few important things to remember. So the first of these is that these relationships that you're building when you're building a network are two-way. So you really want to set that up from the start. This is a conversation rather than just broadcasting. Sometimes organisations are kind of used to just broadcasting, just putting information out there, rather than really starting conversations with the people who they're interested in. Relationships with contacts in your professional network need to be nurtured just like friendships do. So you need to have some way of feeding that professional friendship, that professional connection, of getting in touch every so often, of arranging to meet up, checking out what's new for each other, and sending suggestions and things that you might think that the other person would like in their direction. When you're thinking about the way in which you're building your network, it's useful to remember that these favoured modes of keeping in touch change all the time as user loyalty shifts. So a particular social network that might be really popular today, people might have left it within 6 months or a year's time. So you need to really find and shift and change with people's different favoured modes of keeping in touch. So it's often not worth just being stubborn about it and saying, oh, I only want to keep in touch with people in this way, because actually, people will move on through to different networks and different modes of doing things all the time. So it's worth keeping an eye on that and understanding what those shifts are. Also, it's worth asking your contacts what way they would like you to keep in touch with them. And if you can, let them manage this. So with mailing lists, it's customary now for people to have a way to opt out or sign out of that mailing list, and also an easy way to sign up. So that's one example of allowing your contacts to choose how you're keeping in touch with them or how they're keeping in touch with you.